r/AITA my family ruined my promotion party, so I exposed their secrets. The champagne glass shattered against the restaurant's marble floor, and I watched 3 years of hard work dissolve into a puddle of humiliation as my mother swayed on her feet, mascara already smudged at 7 p.m. "Oh, Sarah," she slurred, her voice dripping with that special brand of condescension she perfected over my 28 years of existence. "You're just so proud of your little promotion, aren't you?" My colleagues from the marketing firm sat frozen around the elegantly set table I'd reserved for this celebration. David, my boyfriend of 2 years, had gone completely still beside me, his hand halfway to his water glass. The managing director who'd personally approved my promotion to senior vice president was staring at my family like they were a car accident happening in slow motion. They weren't wrong. "Mom, maybe you should sit down," I whispered, my cheeks burning as I noticed other diners turning to stare at our table. "Sit down?" My sister Emma cackled, clearly 3 drinks past tipsy despite dinner not even being served yet. "Why should she sit down? This is hilarious. Sarah actually thinks she's better than us now." My father said nothing, just stared at his phone with that glazed expression I'd learned meant he was checking betting odds. Even at my promotion dinner. Even when his wife and daughter were actively destroying the most important professional moment of my life. "Emma, please," I started. Please, Emma mocked in a baby voice. "God, you're so pathetic, Sarah. You invite us to this fancy place to show off, and now you can't handle when we don't play along with your little fantasy." The waiter approached hesitantly, clearly unsure whether to intervene or pretend nothing was happening. My boss, was checking his watch. David looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. 3 years. 3 years of 60-hour weeks, of staying late while everyone else went home, of missing birthdays and vacations and social events to prove I deserved this promotion. 3 years of dreaming about this moment, about finally having something that was mine, something I'd earned. And they were destroying it. Again. Actually, you know what? My mother straightened up, that dangerous glint in her eye that I'd learned to fear as a child. "Since we're all here celebrating Sarah's amazing achievement, maybe we should share some stories about our little overachiever." My stomach dropped. Like the time she told everyone at her high school graduation that she was valedictorian when she was actually 3rd in her class. Or when she... "That's not true," I said quietly, but my voice was lost in her theatrical performance. Padded her college applications with volunteer work she never actually did. Our Sarah has always been so creative with the truth when it makes her look good. The lies rolled off her tongue so easily, each one designed with surgical precision to humiliate me in front of the people whose respect I'd spent years earning. Emma was recording it on her phone now, probably planning to post it on social media later. This was supposed to be my night. My moment. Instead, I was 30 seconds away from losing everything that mattered to me professionally because my family couldn't stand to see me succeed. The familiar rage started building in my chest, not the hot, explosive kind, but the cold, calculating fury that comes from 28 years of being the family scapegoat. I looked around the table at their faces, smug, drunk, completely oblivious to the line they'd just crossed. They had no idea what they'd just unleashed. I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against the floor with a sound that seemed to echo through the suddenly quiet restaurant. Every eye at our table was on me, some pitying, others curious about what the pathetic daughter would do next. "You know what, Mom? You're absolutely right." My voice came out steady, almost serene. "We should definitely share some family stories tonight." Something in my tone must have registered because Emma stopped recording and actually looked at me for the first time all evening. My mother's triumphant smile flickered slightly. "Sarah," David started, but I held up a hand. "No, really. I think my colleagues should know more about the wonderful family that raised me." I picked up my wine glass, surprised to find my hand wasn't shaking. After all, they've shared so much about me already. My father finally looked up from his phone, his face pale. He knew that look in my eyes. He'd seen it once before, when I was 16 and caught him with betting slips hidden in my college fund envelope. "Sweetheart, let's not," he began. "Oh, Dad, don't be modest." I smiled at him, and I watched him actually flinch. "I'm sure everyone would love to hear about your hobbies. You're so dedicated to them." The managing director leaned forward slightly, clearly trying to figure out if this was some bizarre family dynamic he needed to escape or dinner theater he should endure. My colleague Jessica was filming now too, probably for entirely different reasons than Emma had been. "Actually, you know what would be even better?" I continued, my voice getting stronger with each word. "Since we're sharing stories about dishonesty and achievement, maybe we should talk about Emma's incredible career success." Emma's face went white. "Sarah, shut up." "Oh, come on, don't be shy. Tell everyone about your job at the marketing firm downtown. You know, the one you've been posting about on Instagram for the past 8 months." I said shut up. Emma's voice cracked. "The job that pays for your designer handbags and your new apartment in the trendy part of town?" I tilted my head, studying her panicked expression. I'm sure my actual colleagues from actual marketing firms would love to compare notes about the industry. David was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. Maybe he hadn't. I'd spent 2 years being the sweet, accommodating girlfriend who never made waves, who always made excuses for my family's behavior, who absorbed their toxicity and apologized for it later. My mother tried to regain control of the situation. "Sarah, you're being dramatic. Sit down and stop embarrassing yourself." "Embarrassing myself?" I laughed, and the sound was sharp enough to cut glass. "Mom, I haven't even gotten started yet." She took a step back, and for the first time in my life, I saw something I'd never seen in her eyes when she looked at me, fear. The waiter approached again, this time with backup, a manager who was clearly trying to decide whether to comp our meal or call security. "Is everything all right here?" the manager asked, his voice professionally neutral but his eyes scanning for potential damage to restaurant property or other diners' experiences. "Everything's perfect," I said, never taking my eyes off my mother's face. "We're just sharing some family stories." "Aren't we, Mom?" The temperature at our table seemed to drop 10 degrees. My colleagues were exchanging glances, David was gripping his napkin like a lifeline, and my family was finally, speechless. "In fact," I continued, raising my wine glass higher, "I think a toast is in order." The silence stretched like a taut wire about to snap. I could feel the weight of every stare in the restaurant, but for the first time in my life, I didn't care who was watching my family implode. A toast, I repeated, my voice carrying across the dining room. To family. To honesty. To finally telling the truth. My mother's eyes darted toward the exit, but Emma grabbed her arm. Don't you dare leave me here to deal with this, Emma hissed, loud enough for our table to hear. Deal with what? I asked innocently. I'm just celebrating with the people I love most. Isn't that right, Dad? You love celebrating. Especially when the odds are good. My father's phone clattered onto his plate. Sarah, please. Not here. Not here? I laughed, and it felt like poison leaving my system. When, then? When would be a good time to talk about how you've been draining Mom's inheritance to fund your little hobby? Should we schedule a family meeting? David's hand found my elbow. Sarah, maybe we should. Should what, David? Should I protect them? Like I've been doing my entire life? I shook him off gently but firmly. Should I sit down and take it while they destroy everything I've worked for? My boss cleared his throat. Perhaps we should reschedule this dinner. No. The word came out sharper than I intended. No, Mr. Henderson. Stay. Please. I think you should hear this. I think you should know exactly what kind of person you just promoted to senior vice president. Emma was frantically texting someone under the table, probably her boyfriend, probably spinning some story about crazy Sarah having a breakdown. The same boyfriend she'd been cheating on for 3 months with her married boss from her fake marketing job. You want to know who I really am? I continued, addressing my colleagues but never taking my eyes off my family. I'm the person who covered for my father when he stole from my college fund. I'm the person who lied to landlords when my sister skipped out on leases. I'm the person who's been making excuses for my mother's behavior at every family event for a decade. Stop, my mother whispered, but her voice had lost all its earlier venom. I'm the person who worked 3 jobs to put herself through college because her father gambled away her tuition money. I'm the person who's been enabling a family of liars and addicts because I was too scared to be the bad guy. The restaurant had gone completely quiet now. Even the kitchen noise seemed muted. Other diners weren't even pretending not to stare anymore. But you know what the really pathetic part is? I set my wine glass down with deliberate precision. I kept hoping that someday, just once, they'd be proud of me. That they'd show up for me the way I've been showing up for them. Emma's phone screen lit up with an incoming call. The name Richard flashed across it, Richard being her supposed boss, the one she'd been posting about constantly, the one whose company didn't exist because Emma hadn't had a real job in over a year. Oh, look, I said brightly. Emma's boyfriend is calling. Sorry, did I say boyfriend? I meant her married sugar daddy who's been paying her rent while she pretends to have a career. Emma lunged forward, grabbing for my arm. You psychotic bitch, oh. You'll what? I stepped back smoothly, and she stumbled, knocking over her water glass. You'll ruin my reputation? Destroy my career? Make me look like a liar in front of everyone who matters to me? The irony seemed to dawn on her, and her face crumpled. Because that ship has sailed, Emma. You already did that. My mother was crying now, mascara streaking down her cheeks in black rivers. We're your family, Sarah. How can you do this to us? And that question, broke something inside me that had been cracking for years. How can I do this to you? The question hung in the air like smoke, and I felt something fundamental shift inside my chest. The last thread of guilt, the final strand of obligation that had kept me tethered to their dysfunction, snapped clean. How can I do this to you? I repeated, my voice rising with each word. You want to know how, Mom? You really want to know? David was tugging at my sleeve now, whispering urgently, Sarah, please, let's just go. Let's leave. But I couldn't leave. Not anymore. Not when I was this close to finally saying everything I'd swallowed for 28 years. I can do this because 3 hours ago, I called your office to invite you personally to dinner. You know what your secretary told me, Mom? I turned to face my colleagues, my voice carrying across the silent restaurant. She told me my mother was in a very important meeting and couldn't be disturbed. My mother's face went ash white. Except it wasn't a meeting, was it? It was your weekly appointment with Tom Henderson. I paused, letting the name sink in. Yes, that Henderson. My boss's younger brother. Mr. Henderson's fork clattered to his plate. What did you just say? Oh, you didn't know your brother was having an affair with his secretary? I asked with mock surprise. The same secretary who's married to Dad here? Small world, isn't it? The silence that followed was deafening. Emma had gone completely still, her phone forgotten in her lap. My father looked like he might vomit. Sarah, stop this right now, my mother hissed, but her voice shook. Stop? I laughed, and it sounded wild even to my own ears. I'm just getting started. You want to talk about embarrassment? About lies? Let's talk about how Dad knew about your affair for 6 months and didn't care because he was too busy losing our house payment at the poker tables downtown. David stood abruptly. I can't, Sarah, I can't watch this anymore. Something cold wrapped around my heart as I watched him grab his coat. Where are you going? Home. Away from this. He gestured helplessly at our table. This isn't you. This isn't the woman I fell in love with. No, I said quietly, it's not. The woman you fell in love with was a doormat. A people pleaser who set herself on fire to keep everyone else warm. The woman I fell in love with was kind, he shot back, and his words hit like a physical blow. Kind? The word tasted bitter. I've been kind for 28 years, David. Look where it got me. He shook his head sadly. This isn't kind, Sarah. This is cruel. And it's not going to fix anything. As he walked away, my throat tightened. But I couldn't stop now. The words were pouring out of me like water through a broken dam. You know what's cruel? I called after him, loud enough for the entire restaurant to hear. Cruel is showing up drunk to your daughter's promotion dinner. Cruel is lying about having cancer to get attention at Christmas dinner 2 years ago. Emma gasped. Sarah, no. You promised. I promised to keep your secrets when I thought you were family, I snarled. But family doesn't destroy each other for sport. My mother was backing toward the exit now, her purse clutched against her chest like armor. We're leaving. Emma, come on. Oh, we're not done yet, I said, my voice cutting through the restaurant's stunned silence. We haven't talked about the credit cards Emma opened in my name. Or the loan Dad took out using my identity when his credit got too bad. Mr. Henderson was staring at me with a mixture of horror and fascination. Jessica had her phone out, still recording, her mouth slightly open. The manager appeared at my shoulder. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to lower your voice or what? I turned to face him, and he actually took a step back. You'll throw me out? Good. Throw us all out. But first, let me finish my toast. I raised my empty wine glass to my fleeing family. To the truth. Finally. The restaurant erupted into chaos as my mother stumbled toward the exit, Emma trailing behind her like a lost child. But my father just sat there, staring at me with something that might have been admiration if it wasn't so terrifying. You know what, Sarah? He set down his phone with deliberate calm. You want to air dirty laundry? Let's really air it out. My blood went cold. There was something in his voice I'd never heard before, a reckless abandonment that made my stomach clench with dread. Dad, don't. No, you started this. He stood up slowly, and I realized he wasn't just checking betting odds on his phone. The slight tremor in his hands, the way he kept licking his lips, he was withdrawing. You want everyone to know what kind of family you come from? Tell them about the $50,000. The bottom dropped out of my world. What $50,000? Mr. Henderson was pulling out his own phone now, probably calling building security. Jessica had gone pale, finally lowering her recording phone as she realized she was witnessing something far darker than family drama. The $50,000 I borrowed from your trust fund to cover the gambling debts. Dad's voice carried across the restaurant with crystal clarity. The trust fund your grandmother left you for your wedding someday. I felt like I was drowning in open air. That trust fund was supposed to be untouchable until I turned 30. Turns out it's not so untouchable when you have power of attorney and some very impatient creditors. He laughed, and the sound was hollow. Funny thing about loan sharks, sweetheart, they don't really care about your daughter's future when you owe them money. My mother had stopped retreating and was staring at him in horror. Michael, what are you talking about? Oh, Linda doesn't know this part yet, he said conversationally, as if we were discussing the weather instead of my financial ruin. I was going to tell her after I figured out how to pay it back. But since we're having truth time. The manager was speaking urgently into his headset now. Other diners were pulling out their phones, some recording, others probably calling friends to tell them about the insane family meltdown happening at Giovanni's. You stole my inheritance? My voice came out as barely a whisper. Borrowed, he corrected. I fully intended to replace it before you found out. With what money? Your next big win at the casino? Emma had gone completely silent, backing away from all of us like we were a fire spreading too quickly to contain. Smart girl. For once in her life, she was reading the room correctly. Here's the really beautiful part, Dad continued, his voice getting louder and more manic. The loan sharks? They know where you work now. They know about your fancy promotion. They're thinking maybe the daughter can pay what the father owes. My legs gave out, and I sank back into my chair. You gave them my information? I had to give them something, Sarah. Some assurance that the debt would be covered. Mr. Henderson stood abruptly, his face flushed with anger. I'm calling the police. Oh, please do, my father said cheerfully. Ask them about identity theft while you're at it. Ask them about forged signatures on loan applications. Sarah's not the only victim here. The words were coming at me too fast. My trust fund was gone. Dangerous people knew where I worked. My father had been using my identity for illegal loans. The promotion I'd worked 3 years for was about to be destroyed by association with a criminal investigation. Michael, shut up. Shut up right now. My mother's voice cut through his rambling like a knife. Why, Linda? Scared your boyfriend's going to find out you knew about some of this? That you helped me forge Sarah's signature on the power of attorney documents? The restaurant spun around me. Everything I thought I knew about my family, every assumption I'd made about the extent of their dysfunction, crumbled like a house of cards in a hurricane. My mother hadn't just been enabling my father's gambling. She'd been actively participating in destroying my future. And they'd been planning it for months. The room tilted sideways, and I gripped the edge of the table to keep from falling over completely. My own parents had conspired to steal my future, and they'd done it so casually that my father was discussing it like a grocery list in front of my boss and colleagues. You helped him forge my signature? The words scraped out of my throat like broken glass. My mother's face crumpled, but not with remorse, with the petulant frustration of someone caught in a lie. Sarah, you have to understand, we were desperate. Desperate enough to steal from your own daughter? Mr. Henderson's voice boomed across the restaurant, and I realized he was furious on my behalf. Desperate enough to forge legal documents? It's not that simple, my mother protested, shooting nervous glances at the other diners who were now openly staring at our table like we were a reality TV show. Michael was getting threats. Real threats. These people were going to hurt him. So you decided to hurt me instead? I stood up slowly, my legs shaking but my voice growing steadier with each word. You decided to destroy my financial future to save him from consequences of his own actions? Emma finally found her voice, though it came out as a strangled whisper. Sarah, I swear I didn't know about any of this. The credit cards, yes, but not. The credit cards? Mr. Henderson interrupted, his face growing redder by the second. There are credit cards too? My father let out a bark of laughter that made several nearby diners actually flinch. Oh, Emma's been busy. Tell them about the student loans, sweetheart. Tell them about the car loan you took out in Sarah's name when your credit got suspended. Emma went white as paper. I was going to pay them back. With what money? I screamed, finally losing the last shred of composure I'd been clinging to. With what possible money were any of you planning to fix this? The manager appeared at our table with 2 security guards, both looking like they'd rather be anywhere else in the world. I'm sorry, but we're going to have to ask your party to leave. You're disturbing other guests. We're disturbing other guests? I laughed hysterically. My family has been systematically destroying my credit, stealing my inheritance, and putting me in danger with loan sharks, and we're worried about disturbing dinner? One of the security guards shifted uncomfortably. Ma'am, if there's criminal activity involved, maybe we should wait for the police. No police, my mother said quickly, grabbing Emma's arm. We're leaving. Right now. Like hell you're leaving. I stepped between them and the exit, and for the first time in my life, I saw my mother actually afraid of me. You don't get to drop this bomb and just walk away. You don't get to destroy my life and disappear into the night. My father was still sitting at the table, watching the chaos unfold with the detached interest of someone watching a movie. You know what the funny part is, Sarah? You think this is rock bottom. Something in his tone made my blood freeze. What do you mean? The loan sharks aren't the worst of our problems. He picked up his phone again, scrolling through something with casual indifference. See, when you miss payments to those kinds of people, they start looking for other ways to collect. Other people in the family who might have assets. Mr. Henderson grabbed my shoulder. Sarah, we need to call the police right now. They already know about your boyfriend, my father continued conversationally. Nice guy, David. Teaches at the elementary school, right? Kids love him. Be a real shame if something happened to disrupt that perfect little life he's built. The world went completely silent except for the sound of my heart hammering against my ribs. You brought David into this? I didn't bring anyone into anything, sweetheart. You did. The moment you decided to have your little truth-telling session, you painted a target on everyone you care about. Emma was crying now, mascara streaming down her face. Dad, please stop talking. Why should I stop? Sarah wanted honesty. She wanted the truth. He looked directly at me with eyes that seemed completely empty. The truth is, Princess, that your little revenge speech just made everything infinitely worse. The security guards were moving closer, but I barely noticed them. My father's words echoed in my head like a death sentence. They already know about your boyfriend. What did you tell them about David? My voice came out deadly quiet, and everyone at the table seemed to freeze. My father shrugged, still scrolling through his phone like he was checking the weather. Just basic information. Where he works, what time he gets off, where he lives. You know, the kind of details concerned creditors like to have. You son of a bitch. The words tore out of my throat before I could stop them. David has nothing to do with this. He does now, my father said with that same casual indifference that was making me want to put my hands around his throat. Funny how quickly innocent people become collateral damage. Mr. Henderson was dialing 911, his fingers shaking slightly as he spoke to the dispatcher. Jessica had gone pale as death, clutching her purse like she was ready to run. The other diners were starting to evacuate, parents grabbing children and heading for the exits as our family drama spiraled into something genuinely dangerous. My mother lunged forward, grabbing my father's phone out of his hands. Michael, shut up. You're making this worse. Worse than what, Linda? Worse than watching our daughter humiliate us in public? Worse than having our dirty laundry aired in front of strangers? He laughed, and the sound was completely unhinged. At least now everyone knows exactly what kind of family we really are. Emma was hyperventilating, sitting down hard in her chair as the magnitude of the situation crashed over her. Oh God, what have we done? Sarah, I'm so sorry, I never meant for. For what? I spun on her, my rage finding a new target. You never meant for what, Emma? For the credit cards you opened in my name? For the car loan? Or did you never mean to get caught? I was going to fix it, she sobbed. I had a plan, I was going to. With your fake job at your fake marketing company? I was screaming now, completely beyond caring who heard me. With money from your married sugar daddy who doesn't exist either? The manager was herding other customers toward a different dining room, shooting nervous glances back at our table like he expected us to start throwing punches at any moment. He wasn't wrong to be worried. Sarah, please, my mother tried to grab my arm, but I jerked away so violently that she stumbled backward. We can fix this. We can figure out a way to. To what? To unfuck my entire life? I was shaking with fury, with adrenaline, with the dawning realization that my family hadn't just humiliated me tonight, they'd endangered everyone I cared about. There is no fixing this, Mom. You've destroyed everything. My father was watching me with something that looked almost like pride, which somehow made everything 10 times worse. There's my girl. There's that fire I always knew you had in you. Too bad you wasted it on trying to be perfect instead of learning how the real world works. The real world? I stepped closer to him, and both security guards moved to flank me. You mean the world where you steal from your own children? Where you put innocent people in danger because you can't control yourself? I mean the world where being nice gets you walked on, and being honest gets you nowhere. His eyes glittered with malicious satisfaction. You spent your whole life trying to be better than us, Sarah. Look how that worked out. The police sirens were getting closer, their wailing cutting through the restaurant's panicked atmosphere. Mr. Henderson was pacing near the windows, his phone pressed to his ear as he spoke rapidly to someone, probably his brother, probably warning him about the affair, about the connections to our family's criminal activity. My career was over. My relationship was probably over. My safety was compromised, David's safety was compromised, and my family was looking at serious jail time for identity theft and fraud. And somehow, in the middle of this complete catastrophe, my father was smiling like he'd just won the lottery. You know what the beautiful irony is here, sweetheart? He asked, leaning back in his chair like he was holding court. You wanted to expose our secrets, but you just exposed yourself as the biggest liar of all. I felt like I'd been slapped. What are you talking about? 3 years to get this promotion, right? 3 years of being the perfect employee? His smile widened. Tell them about the Henderson Industries contract, Sarah. Tell them how you really got the inside track on that deal. My blood turned to ice water in my veins. The Henderson Industries contract. My mouth went completely dry as every pair of eyes at the table turned to me, waiting for an explanation I couldn't give. I don't know what you're talking about, I managed, but my voice cracked on the lie. My father's grin widened like a predator scenting blood. Really? You don't remember having coffee with Tom Henderson 6 months ago? The same Tom who's been fucking your mother? The same Tom who happened to mention some very specific details about his company's upcoming marketing needs? The room started spinning. Mr. Henderson's face went from confused to furious in the span of 3 seconds. Sarah, is this true? The word stuck in my throat like cement. Because it was true. Not the way my father was making it sound, but true enough to destroy me. It wasn't like that. Like what? Mr. Henderson's voice was deadly quiet. Like using pillow talk from your mother's affair to gain competitive advantage at my company? No. I didn't know they were, but that was a lie too, and everyone could hear it in my voice. I'd known. Maybe not consciously, maybe not admitting it to myself, but when Tom Henderson had mentioned his company's marketing budget over coffee, when he'd casually dropped hints about their upcoming campaign needs, some part of me had known exactly why he was being so generous with information. The police sirens were right outside now, red and blue lights flashing through the restaurant's windows like a disco from hell. Other customers were streaming toward the exits, giving our table a wide berth as if dysfunction was contagious. That's why she really got the promotion, my father announced to anyone still listening. Not because of her hard work. Because she had inside information from her mother's boyfriend. Jessica lowered her phone completely, staring at me like I was a stranger. Sarah, tell me he's lying. But I couldn't. Because even though I'd never asked Tom for information, even though I'd never consciously used what he'd told me, the fact remained that I'd had advanced knowledge of Henderson Industries' needs. Knowledge that had helped me craft the perfect pitch. Knowledge that had given me an unfair advantage over my colleagues. Including Jessica, who'd been competing for the same promotion. Jesus Christ, Sarah. Jessica's voice was barely a whisper. I worked my ass off for that position. We all did. And you had inside information the whole time? It wasn't intentional, I said desperately, but even as the words left my mouth, I knew how pathetic they sounded. I didn't know he was going to. Bullshit. Jessica stood up so fast her chair fell backward. You absolutely knew. That's why you were so confident in the final presentation. That's why your proposal was so perfectly tailored to their needs. Mr. Henderson was already on his phone again, this time with someone from HR. I could hear fragments of his conversation, immediate investigation. Conflict of interest. Possible termination. My promotion was evaporating in real time, taking my career and my reputation with it. Oh, this is delicious, Emma said, her tears forgotten as she watched my world implode. Saint Sarah isn't so perfect after all. Shut up, Emma, I snarled, but the fight was going out of me. Everything was unraveling too fast to stop. Why should I shut up? You just destroyed our entire family to make yourself look good, and it turns out you're the biggest fraud of all of us. The police were at the door now, conferring with the manager and looking around the dining room for our table. When they spotted us, the only table still occupied in what had become a disaster zone of abandoned meals and overturned chairs, they started walking over with the grim determination of people who'd seen this kind of family meltdown before. Ma'am, the first officer addressed me directly, we need to speak with you about some allegations that have been made. My father leaned back in his chair, watching me face the consequences with obvious satisfaction. Careful what you say, sweetheart. Anything you tell them about us applies to you too now. And as the officer began reading me my rights, I realized that in trying to destroy my family's lies, I'd revealed the one truth that would destroy me instead. The officer's words blurred together as I stared at my father's triumphant face. Right to remain silent, anything you say can and will be used against you. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. Officer, Mr. Henderson interrupted, stepping forward with his phone still pressed to his ear. I need to report corporate fraud as well. This employee gained her promotion through insider information obtained through her family's personal relationships. The second officer pulled out a notepad. Sir, we're going to need you to file that as a separate complaint. Right now we're here about identity theft and financial fraud. Identity theft. The words hit me like a physical blow. I was about to be arrested for crimes I didn't even know were being committed in my name. Wait, I said, my voice cracking. I'm the victim here. They used my information without my consent. The first officer looked between me and my family with the weary expression of someone who'd dealt with plenty of these situations. Ma'am, we'll sort that out at the station. But there are also allegations that you were aware of and benefited from some of these activities. My mother chose that moment to find her voice. She knew about the power of attorney, she said quickly, desperately trying to shift blame. She signed papers when she turned 18 giving us access to her accounts for emergencies. That's not true. I spun around to face her, handcuffs jangling from the officer's belt as he moved closer. I never signed anything like that. The documents are at home, my father added helpfully. In the safe. Along with all the loan paperwork showing Sarah as a co-signer. The room was spinning. Not only had they forged documents, but they'd apparently created an entire paper trail designed to make me look complicit. How long had they been planning this? How long had I been walking around thinking I was their victim when they'd actually been setting me up as their accomplice? Emma was edging toward the exit, probably hoping to slip away while the police were focused on the rest of us. But the second officer noticed her movement and stepped to block her path. Nobody leaves until we get statements from everyone, he said firmly. I don't have anything to do with this, Emma protested, but her voice was shaking. The credit cards were just, it wasn't that much money. How much money are we talking about? The first officer asked, pulling out his own notepad. Emma's face crumpled. Maybe 15,000? Across 3 cards? $15,000. In credit cards opened using my social security number, my address, my employment information. Cards that had probably been maxed out and defaulted on, destroying my credit score without me even knowing it. Jesus, Emma, I whispered. 15,000? It was supposed to be temporary, she sobbed. Richard said he was going to help me pay it back, but then his wife found out about us and he cut contact and I didn't know what to do. Who's Richard? The officer asked. Emma shot a panicked look at my father, who was still sitting calmly as if he were watching a particularly interesting movie. He owns a marketing company. No, he doesn't, I said flatly. Richard doesn't exist, does he? Or if he does, he's not who you think he is. My father chuckled. Oh, Richard exists. He's just not a marketing executive. He's a bartender at the casino downtown. Married, 3 kids, probably makes $30,000 a year. Emma went white as a sheet. That's not. He showed me his business cards. He took me to nice restaurants. With money he won at poker, my father continued conversationally. Money he needed to pay back before his wife found out he'd been gambling their mortgage payments. Funny how these things work out. The officer looked up from his notepad. So this Richard person was also involved in the financial fraud? Richard was Emma's mark, my father said with obvious amusement. Just like Emma was his mark. They were both playing each other, and Emma lost. I watched my sister's face as the truth hit her. The successful businessman she'd been sleeping with, the man she thought was going to rescue her from her fake life, was just another desperate person running scams to survive. She destroyed my credit for someone who was probably as broke as she was. This is insane, Mr. Henderson muttered, still on his phone with what sounded like the company's legal department. Completely insane. The first officer turned back to me. Ma'am, we're going to need you to come with us to sort this out. We'll need detailed statements about your knowledge of these activities and your involvement in the corporate fraud allegations. Corporate fraud. The Henderson Industries contract. My promotion that I'd worked 3 years for, that I'd earned through 60-hour weeks and sacrificed relationships for, was now being labeled as corporate fraud. And maybe it was. Maybe I was exactly as corrupt as the rest of my family, just better at lying to myself about it. Can I call my lawyer? I asked quietly. My father laughed. With what money, sweetheart? Your trust fund's gone, remember? And something tells me your employer isn't going to be paying for legal representation. The handcuffs clicked around my wrists with a sound that seemed to echo through the empty restaurant. As the officer led me toward the door, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the dark windows, disheveled, mascara-stained, wearing the same elegant dress I'd put on this morning when my biggest worry was whether the wine pairing would complement the meal. This morning, when I thought I was celebrating the beginning of my real life. Instead, I'd just destroyed everything I'd ever worked for, and I was taking everyone I cared about down with me. The police station smelled like disinfectant and desperation. I'd been sitting in this metal chair for 3 hours, my elegant dress wrinkled and my mascara long since cried away, watching officers shuffle paperwork that would probably determine the rest of my life. Detective Rodriguez had kind eyes but a no-nonsense voice. Ms. Chen, I need you to walk me through the Tom Henderson situation one more time. I rubbed my temples, trying to organize thoughts that felt like scattered puzzle pieces. I met him for coffee 6 months ago. He said he was a friend of my mother's, wanted to get to know me better. And during this coffee meeting, he discussed his company's marketing needs? The truth sat in my throat like a stone. Not directly. He mentioned they were frustrated with their current agency, said they were looking for fresh approaches. I thought he was just making conversation. But you used that information in your proposal to Henderson Industries. I crafted a proposal that addressed the concerns he'd mentioned, yes. The word sounded pathetic even to me. But I didn't know he was having an affair with my mother. I didn't know they'd discussed it beforehand. Detective Rodriguez made a note. When did you realize the connection? That was the question I'd been dreading. Because the truth was, I'd started suspecting something months ago. The way Tom had been so specific about Henderson Industries' frustrations. The way my mother had suddenly become interested in my work projects. The way she'd asked detailed questions about my clients and presentations. I pushed the suspicions down because I'd wanted the promotion so badly. Because I told myself I was being paranoid. Because admitting the truth would have meant giving up everything I'd worked for. I suspected something was off a few weeks ago, I admitted quietly. But I didn't want to believe it. The detective's expression softened slightly. Ms. Chen, intent matters here. If you genuinely didn't know about the affair and the connection when you wrote the proposal. But I did know, I interrupted, surprised by my own honesty. Maybe not consciously, but some part of me knew. And I chose not to look too closely because I wanted the promotion. Rodriguez set down her pen and studied my face. That's quite an admission to make without a lawyer present. I'm tired of lying, I said, and realized I meant it. I'm tired of pretending to be better than my family when apparently I'm just as willing to cut corners when it serves me. A knock on the door interrupted us. Another officer stuck his head in. Detective? The boyfriend's here. My heart lurched. David's here? He's pretty upset, the officer continued. Says he needs to talk to Ms. Chen immediately. Something about threats. Detective Rodriguez frowned. What kind of threats? David appeared in the doorway before anyone could stop him, his face pale and his hands shaking. Sarah, they came to the school. These men came to my classroom asking about you. The air rushed out of my lungs. Oh God, David, I'm so sorry. They knew everything, he continued, his voice cracking. They knew my schedule, knew which kids were in my class, knew that I coached the soccer team after school. They said your family owed them money and I might be able to help them collect. Detective Rodriguez was already reaching for her phone. We need to get you into protective custody immediately. No, David said firmly. I'm not hiding. But I need to understand what's happening here, Sarah. I need to know how bad this really is. I looked at him standing in that fluorescent lit room, this man who'd loved me for 2 years, who'd planned to propose next month. I'd seen the ring box hidden in his sock drawer, and I realized I was about to lose him forever. It's bad, David. It's worse than anything I said at dinner. His jaw tightened. Tell me everything. And for the first time in my life, I did. I told David everything. About the trust fund, about my father's gambling debts, about the loan sharks who now had his information. About Tom Henderson and the insider information that had secured my promotion. About the forged documents and the credit cards and the web of lies that had been growing around me for years without my knowledge. With each revelation, I watched something die in his eyes. So the promotion you've been working toward for 3 years, he said slowly, his voice carefully controlled, you got it because your mother's affair partner fed you confidential information. I didn't know that's what was happening at the time. But you suspected. It wasn't a question. And you didn't say anything because you wanted it more than you wanted to do the right thing. The truth of it hit me like a slap. Yes. David nodded, his teacher instincts probably recognizing the difference between deflection and genuine honesty. And these loan sharks have my work address because your father gave it to them. Yes. And they threatened my students today because your family used me as collateral for debts I didn't even know existed. David, I swear I had no idea. But you knew your father had gambling problems, he continued relentlessly. You knew your family was unstable. You knew they were capable of this kind of chaos, and you brought me into it anyway. Detective Rodriguez cleared her throat. Mr. Walsh, we really do need to discuss protection options. I need a minute, David said sharply, never taking his eyes off me. Sarah, I need you to tell me one thing, and I need you to be completely honest. No more half-truths, no more protecting everyone else's feelings. I nodded, though my throat felt like sandpaper. Did you know, even subconsciously, that your relationship with me might eventually put me at risk? That your family's problems might become my problems? The question hung in the air like a death sentence. Because the honest answer was yes. I'd always known my family was toxic, had always known they left destruction in their wake. And some buried part of me had always feared that loving me meant inheriting their chaos. Yes, I whispered. I was afraid of exactly this. But you let me fall in love with you anyway. I thought I could protect you from them. I thought if I kept you separate. You can't keep a bomb separate from your life, Sarah. It was always going to explode eventually. David sat down heavily in the plastic chair across from me. The worst part is, I could have handled the family drama. The drinking, the dysfunction, even the criminal stuff. But you lied to me. I never lied to you about how I feel. You lied about who you are. His voice broke slightly. You let me believe you were this principled person who succeeded through pure hard work. You let me brag about your promotion to my friends, to my parents, to my students' parents. And all of it was built on fraud. Detective Rodriguez was watching this conversation with the uncomfortable expression of someone trapped in someone else's therapy session. Folks, we really need to focus on the immediate safety concerns. There's more, David said suddenly, pulling out his phone. The men who came to my school today? They left this. He showed me a text message that made my blood freeze. Tell Sarah Chin she has 48 hours to arrange payment. If she can't cover daddy's debts, maybe her boyfriend's insurance policy can. They threatened to kill you, I said numbly. They threatened to make it look like an accident, David corrected. Very specific about that part. Rodriguez was already on her radio, calling for additional units. We're moving both of you to protective custody immediately. These aren't idle threats. Loan sharks don't typically target elementary school teachers unless they're serious about collecting. How much? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. How much does my father owe them? David scrolled through the messages they'd sent him. According to this, the principal was originally $50,000, your trust fund money. But with interest and penalties for missed payments, it's now sitting at $85,000. $85,000. More money than I had, even with my promotion salary. More money than I could possibly raise in 48 hours. There's something else, David said quietly. They know about your promotion. They know about your salary increase. They think you can afford to pay them back now. But I can't. Even if I keep my job, which I won't, I don't have that kind of money available. They don't care. David's voice was flat, emotionless. They made it very clear that your father's debts are now your debts. And if you can't pay. He didn't finish the sentence, but he didn't need to. The implications were crystal clear. My family hadn't just stolen my trust fund and destroyed my career. They'd painted targets on both of us, and now we had less than 2 days to come up with money I didn't have to pay for debts I hadn't incurred. And somewhere in this mess of fraud and threats and broken promises, I still had to figure out if there was anything left of the life I'd spent 3 years building. The protective custody safe house felt like a cheap motel decorated by someone who'd only heard hotels described secondhand. David sat on the opposite bed, staring at the wall like it held answers to questions he didn't want to ask. Your mother's been calling, he said without looking at me, gesturing to his phone. 17 times in the past hour. I didn't reach for the phone. What does she want? To explain. To apologize. To tell you she never meant for it to go this far. His voice carried no emotion at all. The usual things people say when their lies finally catch up with them. Detective Rodriguez knocked and entered without waiting for permission. We have an update on your family's situation. I braced myself for more bad news. Your father's been arrested, but your mother and sister were released on bail. However, we intercepted communications suggesting they're planning to meet with the loan sharks directly. My stomach dropped. They're going to try to negotiate? More likely they're going to try to pin everything on you, Rodriguez said bluntly. We have recorded calls where your mother discusses providing additional collateral to extend their timeline. David finally looked at me. What additional collateral could she possibly have? Rodriguez consulted her notes. Your employment information, your new salary details, and something called the Henderson connection. The room went cold. What Henderson connection? Apparently your mother thinks Tom Henderson can be leveraged for money. She's been telling the loan sharks that her daughter has intimate access to a wealthy family through her job. I felt the walls closing in. Not only had my family destroyed my career, but now they were actively using my professional relationships to dig us deeper into debt with dangerous people. There's more, Rodriguez continued. The loan sharks have been doing their own research on Henderson Industries. They're planning to approach the company directly if they don't get payment soon. David's face went ashen. They're going to extort Sarah's boss? They're going to tell Henderson Industries that their new senior vice president is connected to a criminal enterprise and that the company might face liability if they don't cooperate. Rodriguez's expression was grim. It's sophisticated for street-level debt collectors. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Asterisk Sarah, this is Tom Henderson. We need to talk. My brother received some very disturbing calls about you today. If this is what I think it is, we have a serious problem, asterisk. I showed the message to Rodriguez, who immediately called for a trace on the number. Tom Henderson is reaching out directly? David asked, reading over my shoulder. He's probably trying to distance himself from the mess, I said, but even as the words left my mouth, I knew it was more complicated than that. Rodriguez's phone rang. She answered, listened for a moment, then hung up with a curse. Your mother just showed up at Henderson Industries. She's in the lobby right now demanding to speak with Tom Henderson. Oh God, I whispered. She's going to tell his wife about the affair. She's going to blow up his marriage to try to gain leverage over him, David corrected, and I realized he was right. My mother wasn't just destroying her own life anymore. She was systematically targeting everyone connected to this mess, trying to create enough chaos and mutual destruction that someone would pay the loan sharks to make it all go away. We need to get down there, I said, standing up quickly. Absolutely not, Rodriguez replied. You're in protective custody for a reason. You don't understand. My mother isn't just desperate, she's strategic. If she's going to Henderson Industries, she has a plan. I grabbed my jacket. And that plan probably involves destroying more lives than just mine. David was already putting on his shoes. I'm coming with you. David, you don't have to. Yes, I do. His voice was steady but sad. Maybe I can't fix what's broken between us, but I'm not letting you face this alone. As we headed for the door, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Emma. Sarah, you need to call me right now. Mom isn't just talking to Tom Henderson. She's talking to his wife too. And she has photos. The elevator ride to Henderson Industries felt like descending into hell in slow motion. David stood rigid beside me, Detective Rodriguez speaking rapidly into her radio about containment protocols, while my phone buzzed incessantly with texts I was too terrified to read. She's been planning this, I said, the realization hitting me like ice water. My mother's been planning this whole confrontation from the beginning. Rodriguez glanced up from her radio. What do you mean? She didn't just stumble into an affair with Tom Henderson. She targeted him because he was connected to my work. The pieces were clicking together with horrible clarity. She knew I was competing for the promotion. She knew Henderson Industries was our biggest potential client. David's jaw tightened. You think she orchestrated the whole thing? The affair, the insider information, all of it? Think about it, what are the odds that my narcissistic mother randomly starts sleeping with the brother of my boss right when I'm up for the biggest promotion of my career? My voice cracked as the full scope of her manipulation became clear. She set up a chess game where everyone was a pawn. The elevator dinged at the 42nd floor, and through the glass doors I could see chaos unfolding in Henderson Industries' normally pristine lobby. My mother stood in the center like the eye of a hurricane, her voice carrying across the marble space as she gestured dramatically at a woman I'd never seen before, an elegant blonde in her 50s who had to be Tom Henderson's wife. 3 years your husband has been lying to you, Carol, my mother was saying, her voice pitched for maximum emotional impact. 3 years of hotel rooms and secret phone calls and promises he was never going to keep. Mrs. Henderson's face was pale but composed, the kind of controlled rage that comes from money and breeding and knowing exactly how much public humiliation costs. Tom Henderson stood beside her like a man facing execution, his eyes darting desperately around the lobby for escape routes that didn't exist. Mom, I called out, stepping through the elevator doors, stop this right now. She whirled around, and for a split second I saw something flicker across her face, triumph, maybe, or vindication. Sarah. Perfect timing. I was just explaining to Carol here how her husband helped you steal her family's money. I didn't steal anything, I said, but my voice sounded weak even to me. No, my mother's smile was sharp as broken glass. Then explain to everyone how you got confidential information about Henderson Industries' marketing budget. Explain how you knew exactly what to propose when your competitors were shooting in the dark. Mrs. Henderson's eyes locked onto mine with laser focus. You're the employee who used my husband's affair to gain corporate secrets? The accusation hung in the air like poison gas. Every person in that lobby, employees, visitors, security guards, was staring at me with a mixture of fascination and disgust. Mrs. Henderson, I can explain. Can you? My mother pulled out her phone, swiping to a photo that made my blood freeze. Because I have pictures of Tom giving Sarah documents from his briefcase. Taken 6 months ago at that cute little cafe on 5th Street. The photo showed Tom and me at coffee, and from the angle my mother had captured, it absolutely looked like he was passing me confidential papers. In reality, he'd been showing me pictures of his new boat, but the camera had turned an innocent moment into evidence of corporate espionage. You photographed us? I stared at her in horror. You've been planning this for months? I've been protecting this family for months, she snapped. While you were playing perfect daughter, I was making sure we'd have options when everything fell apart. Detective Rodriguez stepped forward, her badge visible. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to stop talking and step away from these people. But my mother was beyond caring about consequences now. She was in full performance mode, feeding off the chaos she'd created. Options like blackmail? Mrs. Henderson's voice cut through the lobby like a sword. Like destroying people's careers and marriages to cover your family's criminal debts? Like survival, my mother shot back. Something you wouldn't understand, Carol, with your trust funds and your perfect life. Some of us have to fight for what we need. And that's when I realized the most terrifying truth of all, my mother wasn't desperate or broken or sorry. She was enjoying this. The lobby erupted into chaos as Mrs. Henderson's composure finally cracked. You destroyed my marriage for survival, she screamed, lunging toward my mother with perfectly manicured nails aimed at her face. Security guards rushed between them while my mother actually laughed, a sound so cold and delighted that several bystanders stepped backward instinctively. Linda, for God's sake, shut up. Tom Henderson finally found his voice, grabbing his wife's arm to pull her away from my mother's reach. You're making this worse for everyone. Worse? My mother's eyes glittered with manic energy. Tom, darling, we haven't even gotten to the good part yet. Detective Rodriguez was shouting into her radio for backup, but my mother was already pulling up another photo on her phone. Carol, did you know your husband has been embezzling from his own company to pay for our little adventures? Those weekend trips he told you were client meetings? Funded with Henderson Industries expense accounts. The color drained from Tom's face. Linda, that's not, you can't. Can't what? Can't tell the truth? My mother held up bank statements that I somehow knew she'd stolen from his briefcase during one of their hotel encounters. $73,000 in fraudulent expense reports over 2 years. All documented right here. Mrs. Henderson sank into a lobby chair like her strings had been cut. 73,000? But wait, there's more. My mother announced like a deranged game show host. Tell your wife about the Henderson Industries shares you've been selling, Tom. The ones you forged her signature to access. David grabbed my arm, his fingers digging into my skin. Sarah, your mother isn't trying to get money from them. She's trying to destroy them completely. And suddenly I understood. This wasn't about paying off the loan sharks. This was about burning down everyone who had something she wanted, everyone who had ever made her feel small or powerless. Tom Henderson was backing toward the elevators, his face ashen. Linda, if you release those documents, you'll go to prison for theft. Those are private financial records. Will I? My mother's smile widened impossibly. Because according to my lawyer, when someone uses forged signatures to access accounts, any documents obtained become evidence of criminal activity. Public interest, they call it. She'd planned for this. She'd actually consulted lawyers about how to destroy these people without destroying herself. Mrs. Henderson stood up slowly, her composure returning with the cold fury of someone who'd spent decades navigating high society warfare. You want to play games with my family's money? Let me tell you what happens next. She pulled out her own phone, speed dialing with the efficient movements of someone accustomed to wielding power. James? It's Carol Henderson. I need you to freeze all accounts associated with Linda Chen and her family members immediately. Yes, all of them. And James? I want every credit reporting agency contacted within the hour. My mother's triumphant expression flickered for the first time. You can't. I can't. Mrs. Henderson's laugh was pure ice. Sweetheart, I sit on the boards of 3 banks and 2 credit agencies. By tonight, your family won't be able to get approved for a library card. Detective Rodriguez finally got through to her backup, but as police sirens wailed in the distance, I realized we were past the point where law enforcement could contain this. My mother hadn't just destroyed my career and my relationship. She'd declared war on one of the most powerful families in the city, and she was dragging all of us down with her into whatever twisted endgame she'd been planning all along. And somewhere in the city, loan sharks with 48-hour deadlines were watching this public meltdown on social media, calculating exactly how much chaos they could leverage into payment. The sirens grew louder as Mrs. Henderson continued her methodical destruction of my family's financial future, but I barely heard them. Because standing there in that marble lobby, watching my mother's manic glee as she burned down everyone's lives, I finally understood something that had taken me 28 years to see. This wasn't my fault. None of it was my fault. Yes, I'd made mistakes. Yes, I'd used information I shouldn't have, and yes, I'd suspected the truth and chosen not to look too closely. But the web of lies and manipulation that had led us all here? That was decades in the making, and I'd been a victim of it long before I'd ever become complicit in it. Mom, I said quietly, my voice cutting through her theatrical performance like a knife. She turned to me, her eyes bright with the fever of someone who'd finally found the chaos she'd been craving her whole life. I forgive you, I said. The words hit her like a physical blow. Her mouth opened and closed soundlessly, all her venom suddenly drained away by something she'd never expected, genuine pity. I forgive you for stealing my trust fund. I forgive you for destroying my career. I forgive you for putting David in danger. I stepped closer, and she actually backed away from me. But most of all, I forgive you for teaching me that love is supposed to hurt. Sarah, she started, but I held up a hand. I'm done enabling you. I'm done protecting you. I'm done setting myself on fire to keep you warm. I turned to Detective Rodriguez. I want to make a full statement about everything I know. All of it. No more protecting anyone. Rodriguez nodded grimly. What about the loan sharks? The 48-hour deadline? I looked at David, this man I'd loved enough to endanger, and made the hardest decision of my life. I can't pay debts I didn't incur for a family that used me as collateral without my consent. If they come for me, they come for me. But I won't spend the rest of my life running from consequences other people created. David stepped forward, his teacher instincts recognizing a moment of genuine growth. Sarah, I can't be with someone who lies to themselves and others. But I can respect someone who chooses to stop. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something. Maybe, eventually, it could become friendship. Mrs. Henderson approached me, her fury now focused laser-sharp on the people who'd actually wronged her. Ms. Chen, I want you to know that my husband's actions are not your responsibility. Young women shouldn't have to pay for older men's failures to act ethically. I nodded, tears finally starting to fall. Thank you. However, she continued with the precision of someone accustomed to justice, there will be consequences for everyone involved in this situation. Including you. I understand. As the police led my mother away in handcuffs, she looked back at me one final time. For just a moment, the mask slipped, and I saw something that might have been regret. Sarah, she called out, I really did want you to succeed. I know, Mom, I said sadly. But you wanted everyone else to fail more. 6 months later, I was working as a junior marketing coordinator at a small nonprofit, making half my old salary but sleeping better than I had in years. The criminal charges had been reduced to misdemeanors with community service, David and I had started having coffee as friends, and my family's chaos had finally stopped being my emergency. Emma was in rehab. Dad was in therapy and paying restitution. Mom was serving 18 months for fraud, identity theft, and extortion. And I was learning, slowly and carefully, how to build a life based on truth instead of performance. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was finally, authentically mine.